Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers and my audience on this week in interview. Welcome to what I call the pre-show, special 2-hour edition of this week in interview. As you know, on November the 11th, the Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, on November 6th, announced that he was advising the president to dissolve parliament in preparation for elections, which he asked to be called on the 6th of December. And that put the country in a turmoil, in a topsy-turvy, and a lot of the opposition forces decided that it wasn't fair and it wasn't legitimate. And so they decided that they would not participate and show their protest by boycotting the election, so to speak. So since that time, I have started doing a 2-hour special. This is, I think, the third or fourth one that I'm doing. Start at 7 o'clock. We talk politics. We talk about the elections. We explore what it means for Dominica now and into the future. And then at 8 o'clock, I do this week in interview, except last week we did 2 hours. So welcome everyone, gather around, spread the live, let everybody know that we are on, that this week in interview is live. Let everybody know that. Let everybody know that they can come in, they can join, we take their comments and participate. If you are listening to me on RVR Jams, in Dominica, you can get this week in interview live on DigiPlay channel 59 through our affiliate station, RVR Jams Radio, DigiPlay channel 59. Also, you can share the live. Folks who have Facebook can see us on This Week in Interview Facebook page, as well as TDN Radio's Facebook page. If you don't have Facebook, you can catch us on tdntv.net. tdntv.net, you can see us live, as well as on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is TDN Network 1, TDN Network 1 on YouTube. We're also on Instagram and Roku and those other social media. I always have trouble remembering them, so rather than confuse you, if you used to getting it, you can just search for This Week in Interview or TDN Radio on the other social media and you can find us. There are some of you who tune in every week and I appreciate that. I always tell you that I appreciate your time. I don't take it for granted that you make This Week in Interview part of your weekly schedule. I am grateful for that. So thank you for that. And if tonight is the first time you listen to This Week in Interview, I hope you realize what you've been missing and you too can become a regular listener and viewer to This Week in Interview. Because we try to bring you contemporary issues, but from a different angle. Something different that you can find by just browsing the internet or clicking your remote. We do it differently. There's so many talk shows. We've been doing it for 12 years. I think we have some advantage of experience. And we have a feel for what you like and how you would like it delivered to you. And so gather around, share the like, let everybody know. Each of you invite 5 people to watch This Week in Interview. 2 of them might show up, and it's even going to be a bigger activity. So tonight for the first hour, I am talking election. I'm talking election. And there's a couple angles that I want to take to it. For one, I want to talk about what is expected of our representatives, of our leaders. We hear the Prime Minister hurling insults. Even though the election is so lopsided, and by all reports he's going to get all seats, he's still on the attack, like he's upset. Call representatives, got a was, talk to people, shame folks, hardworking people who decide that they want to grow something, harvest it and sell it. He insults them and suggests that you should elect somebody who can give you something. And I want to push back on that and say that we don't want politicians to give us something. What we want politicians to give us is honest opportunities, honest and fair and equal opportunities. And let us build our house for ourselves. Let's not vote somebody who can give us a house and then they hold the title and they can kick us out at any time. Let us elect somebody who can represent us in an honorable way that represents what we are, the values that we would like to pass on to our children. We should expect to see it in the people that we elect. And so we want to talk about that. We want to talk about decency. But also, I believe that government should be of laws. Laws should govern what the government can and cannot do. It should not be personalities, because then you end up with scamps and scoundrels who don't have any moral compass, and they take us for a ride, and we find ourselves having to struggle out of the pits that they drag us into. And so I want to talk about the legality as well. And so I have a guest tonight. My guest tonight is attorney at law Henry Shillingford. And Henry it also happens to be a candidate, an independent candidate, I think, for the Grand Bay constituency. And so I invited Henry on, both in his capacity as, well, three capacities. He's a legal mind, he's an attorney at law, he is a candidate in the election, and anybody that knows Henry knows he's an activist, a fearless activist who hates to see injustice and who has put his body and his self on the line. And I've seen him on camera get roughed up and physically manhandled, and that has not stopped him. Courageous brother he is. And so I invited him on so we could have a talk. We will talk about his candidacy. We will talk about his impression of what is it that we have to deal that we're dealing with. We'll talk about the legality. We talk about steps forward. So I want to welcome Henry Shillingford, attorney at law, to the program. I think he's backstage, so he'll be on at any moment now. And to really start the conversation. Henry, good evening, man. It's a pleasure to have you on this weekend interview.
Well, I'm very flattered that you have asked me, and I have this opportunity to share my views. As you're saying, my activities has made me, the media, not really want to attend to my views. I'd just like to say that, I lived in America for some time, and I moved back to Dominica for the wonders that we all know that Dominica is. And so I would like to start at that point of your discourse, because I thought that's the deepest point, is that what are the ethics and the character of leadership, especially this particular point in time where it seems to be all leadership, one leader. And so what are the characters? Because you could have a one leader, a dictator, as they say, like Haile Selassie, who was eminent and principled in every manner. Or you could have it like Fidel Castro, who led, Cuba to grand elements, as a small place in the space it occupied, to great respect because it was based on ethics and principles. And I, as a Rastaman, have been based on that. And Dominica, in its natural heritage and its cultural heritage, as we all were talking in the green room before, these deep aspects of us growing up and the depths of principles and ethics that was passed on to us by the elders. And all of you all will realize that West Indians do much better in America because they're built on those principles. And because of the harshness of the American white supremacist doctrine and apparatus, Black Americans just cannot feel as confident and built on those principles that you are. Right. And so they're really under threat here because, in fact, they have a leader that represents everything that is not Dominican. And that's what really upsets me. They talk about money laundering and all of this. But the two issues that really ingrain me is that this is a prime minister, the youngest prime minister at the time that he got elected, was married in office in secret. Now you're bringing a woman into the office, the fundamental issue of family and who is this woman that you're taking on. And you're already a public figure, yet you try to do it in private. And then you have two children as prime minister born, right, whilst you're prime minister. But Dominica is not good enough for them to be born. So they're born in the United States.
Right.
I mean, that's really, really appalling. That's more than stealing $10 million because that's stealing my ethics. That's stealing principles. That's stealing something that goes back, like for me, I can trace my things 7 generations to 1821 in Dominica, in fact, in Grand Bay. And so I come from a place, not only personally, but as a Rastaman, deeply understanding the Black traditions and the African traditions that made the Caribbean and, in fact, made the world. African traditions, not only anciently, but contemporarily, made the world. And I'm sick of this nonsense. Black people have to assert themselves. As much as the redskin I may be, I understand Africa and what Africans mean and what African consciousness and principles mean. So that's the first thing. I mean, I'm appalled at the leadership compared to what we knew. And so this character who calls himself, and as you say, even though he has the run of everything, he still feels it necessary to this jelly man is one of the most outstanding people in Dominica. He has
Right.
made coconut an industry. He has occupied the other in the trail Mawa tradition, occupied the other side of the bridge, right? And sold coconuts. And then there's a guy selling on the other side coconuts. Guess who he is? His son. That whole corner where Shillingford's was in my back in the day, the garage there, is all coconut now. People come from, I go in the middle of the day, I can get coconut water anytime I want. You know what that is? That's amazing. That's why I live in Dominica, not because of Skerrit. I live because I can get coconut water. Otherwise, I'd be back in New York. And so this is an outstanding gentleman that climbs and picks jelly every day and brings it to Roseau. I'm telling him he's losing so much because he just throws a lot of the jelly. Anyway, we're getting off track in this sense, but I'm not in the sense of these principles and characters are what Dominica is built on, this independent Mawa spirit. And we're totally not independent. Okay, getting to the law.
Henry, I like where you started.
Huh?
I like where you started with this because you starting from an organic place. That
Yes.
you say this is what Dominica is, and this is what we're supposed to embody as a people. And then we have a leader that's trying his best to strip all of that dignity from us.
And I have the third one, which is really most important.
Go ahead.
Third one is that this is a young man in office for, remember, two. He had his children were born abroad, right? I can't remember the first. I remember it. The third one, though, is very important. As the prime minister of the nature island of the world, and Dominica clearly, as an island state, as a state, has the most outstanding natural features comparatively anywhere to anybody. I mean, I don't even start now. And he has never, not one picture, show me one, of him by the river, him with his family by the sea, him walking in the forest, him with a cutlass. I don't even know if he can pick up a cutlass. I mean, it's appalling, the imagery, the optics, as you all say in the United States. But that speaks to a deep place because it's not just words you're saying off a paper, it's who you are. And so that's where I stand. And this character is so appalling. And I think he's a plant by the international elites because Dominica is such an outstanding place. And I have a whole plan, it's called The Big Idea, where Dominica can actually be the state that represents environmental integrity and cultural integrity in one and can sustain itself on itself once we lower our expectations with all this fanciful modernity that does nothing for nobody. And so if Dominica can represent that to the world, just like that anciency represented to us personally, who love this Dominica and appreciate having to go by the river with our friends and running up trails and climbing trees. I mean, those elements, and then growing herbs and good herbs, become the herb capital of the world. And so there's so much potential, real potential in Dominica. I'm not talking about highly. This is real. Ganja is taken over with herb, naturality. Everybody wants to be natural. We are the absolutely most natural with every integrity. Not just natural in terms of the earth. We have Black people coming, African people coming to Dominica before colonialists and continuing to come for 80 years before colonialists. This is Oprah Winfrey news. Nobody says this, but this is a fact. Dominica has a much greater Mawa tradition. In 1791, Dominica almost took over that after the French came here. I speak on this because of the elections, because this independent nature of Dominica. For example, Dominica is the only place in the Commonwealth where within a year of a prime minister bringing a country to independence, he's overthrown. That don't happen nowhere. The person that brings you to independence is lauded as great and wonderful. Dominicans overthrew him in the first year. We had the first female prime minister. Our history, we had the only parliament at the time of the abolishment of faith that was more non-white than white in the whole Commonwealth. Our history and integrity in these areas is what I would like to speak on, and what I would represent, and that I'm telling Granbayrians, I would represent for you, because Granby represents that to Dominica. So Granby is the example of the.
So Henry, before we, let's cement that.
I know, but it's important because
I'll take you into your candidacy. Hold on, I'll take you
right.
into the candidacy, because I don't want to miss the point that you're making.
Okay.
That to be Dominican means a certain amount of boldness. It means a certain amount of independent spirit, and we have a monument in Roseau that is supposed to represent that Negmawan spirit, that
actually,
black.
I'm just going to say, actually, that doesn't represent the true Mawa spirit of Dominica, because the true Mawa was never in chains in Dominica.
Well, they showed the broken chains, but that's right, because they died instead of being captured.
No, but really, Dominica had slaves. Dominica was Kalinago territory, right, up until 1763. We were the least colonized place. We had less than 100 years of slavery. From 1680, slaves were escaping from Martinique to Dominica.
Right.
Martinique was making rum and cane, rum and sugar by 1680. I live at where they came, Point Caribe. That's how I know the story.
Right.
They came here and they continued to come for 80 years before 1763, when the English broke the treaty between Europeans that gave Dominica to the Kalinagos, and it became colonized by the English. You understand? And Grand Bay, even at the time, was the most active place because it traded with Martinique. Anyway, that's another story. That's in Thomas Fontaine's book, and Leonard Honeychase's book. But I related to the elections and these ethics, and we will get to law, but I'm very proud that you introduced it like that, because that's really what at the heart of me motivated me. Of course, the legal concerns is what convinced me, but why I'm in it and why I've disagreed with some people that, you don't want to vote. If you jump in the water, get wet. If I get 50 people that agree with these radical ideas I have, then I'm happy. You understand? Because Dominica has to be radical, and the world has to become
Henry,
radical.
What happened to that Mawan spirit of Dominica? Because I don't know if I'm missing something, because I'm on the outside looking in, but I don't see anything close to the protest and the expression of dissatisfaction that I expected to see from the opposing forces to the announcement of this election.
Well, that was my exact point that I spoke to the UWP leadership about, is that if you can't bring 10,000 people on the street, then don't talk about no reform, no election. You understand? And I don't think they can, because, as you say, you know where they are? They're in Miami and London and New York and Toronto, like the whole of the Caribbean. That's what's happened to the Caribbean, the brain drain, and they're the brightest and the best of America. You all are the best in America if you do any census per capita as black people, and yet the Caribbean is dying because all our sons and daughters have gone away, and the best and the brightest of us. And those Dominicans listening to me might be vexed, but it's the dregs that are remaining. Even in me, I may be the least successful of my family. So that's a reality throughout the Caribbean, how the middle class has abandoned and fancied the white life against their black, if you will, Malawi. If the middle class in independence had, like Eugenia hinted at, but she wasn't complete. If it hinted that, like a cat like me would really bring in, but not me, but I'm just saying, that's what and I think to answer your question, that's where it's got. At least that's why I hear in Grand Bay. Yo, man, all the man go away, man. Hey, I'm West Coast, man, what's going on? Yo, man, they in London, man, they in VI, they leave.
Right. The people who could fight against it are no longer there.
The U.S. comforts. You understand? Because it's comfort, dude. And that's why I don't want comfort. I'd rather be on the edge. because comfort gets you soft. And that's what happened in America to many of us. You know, I come up in the Panthers in America, and it was really black power in America. When black people were fighting for something, it was edgy. And then Rasta took me from there. And I really think black people need to be more edgy. What is this society doing us? And we need to start in Dominica. If not, you know, if not when, not now when, you know, and if not me, then who?
Then who,
Kind
right?
of.
So
So
let's
that's
talk about
the legal point, and what has moved me personally to do this. If you'd
Henry.
like to go there.
Let's talk about your standing in this election as an independent candidate.
Okay.
You say you have some radical. Well, I am putting radical in front of it. I don't know if you describe it as radical yourself, but you have some
No.
ideas that you would like to see implemented in Dominica. You think that would make a difference. So how do you tie in the standing up against the system, putting up yourself for election, and maybe trying to find a road where some of those ideas that Dominica needs so dearly can be implemented?
Well, let's start at why I'm running, because we
Right.
dealt with the ethical issues that I'm driven by, and how the leadership doesn't represent that, and my sadness about that over time. Now, why I'm running? Why I'm running is because I cannot understand how tricky these English guys are, and I thought I knew law. But put it simple, I can't believe that their system is that if nobody goes against the candidate, he just gets in.
Right.
He doesn't have to even put his case before the constituents. I'm like, what? What? And then I'm looking at this, I'm saying, look what these white boys did. Look what these English tricksters did. They can really give you what they would call a democracy, where you could have a total, like here, 21-0, and it'd be totally lawful, without one vote being cast. Right. I am in Bacatel, and there's no opposition. I'm laughing at all of them, and my friends are with me, and they have to laugh with me, Labor and UWP alike. Oh, they've called an election in your community, right? Wow. But you can't vote. So there's no vote. There's nothing. So your one right under this, trick democracy, as Rasta call it, is to vote, right? It's taken from you. And it's still it's perfectly okay. So you see, law, what these guys have done in law, and I'm a lawyer and I understand, is that they've made it like born-again Christians read the Bible, like every word is of God, so that the law becomes just the words. And words can make you do things that are in your ethics and principles totally, appalling.
Right.
Yo,
what is the
yeah,
spirit
it's the
of
law.
it? What is the spirit
the
of
law,
it?
sir. It's the law. We've written it down. Can't you see? It's written. It's very important when it's written down, on very special paper. I mean, that's what it really is. It sounds clownish, but that's what it is. Like fancy papers with pictures of people on it, and it's worth something. And I'm not being facetious, but when you get down to it, you'll understand even what's happening in the world. Now, so I couldn't believe this as a lawyer, understanding constitutional principles, because that's what I deal with. Because you see, even under the system, it's not, parties are no part of the Constitution. The whole point is to win your constituency. The whole thing is about constituency. So when I saw that, I'm like, what? I was with Afi and in my office, like, dude, this could really happen? This guy could do it. So we actually organized through, with IP, who was also very strong with us. And the leadership in Dom is like myself, IP, really, and Afi, and then this really strong youth group from Newtown, Moonsegre. I mean, that's who it is. That's who it is. So those, and I pointed out that, if this is not done on November 18th, it's a coronation. The government is formed on nomination day. And that's what they thought. That's why they had this march. So we hurried up and hustled people. And, again, we're very helped by, Dr. Pascal monetarily in terms of making it happen. But like, I got registered at 3:45 on the Friday afternoon, and 4 liquor parties were part of my nominee. A guy, a fisherman I know out here, he fishes in thing. I'm good with everybody. You understand? They know I'm not about politics. They know what I'm about. You know what I mean? But this is getting absurd. I never want to go to politics. My whole life has been a non-government organization. I've spoken on behalf of international NGOs at the UN plenary in Bali. You know, I mean, people should know what I've done in this and my environmental work. And I've always shunned away from politics and thought people could do it on their own through CBOs and NGOs, and that's where I've really worked. I mean, half my legal life has been that, not normal law. So it was appalling to me that that could happen. So anyway, we did it, and he could not have any coronation. You understand?
Right.
And he had to go
was one.
and say, no, we have to go win 15. You understand? And so we've got him in this position, and now he has to go on the train, and now he's, you know, what is it, malpalating and, you know, stumbling over himself.
Is that why he's
they
so angry?
60 more days, we beat him. They give us 60 more days, we beat him.
You think that's why he's so angry that
stumbling all sides of the body. Yo, beyond he do it now, the real culprit in this and why it's constitutionally, now we get back to why I did it in law, how the law is set up structurally. I remind you that no Caribbean constitution has been revised since independence, from Jamaica to Trinidad.
That is crazy.
It's absurd. And because they are acts of parliament. All constitutions since the United States forced Britain to let go, Canada, Australia, are acts of parliament. The Queen has granted you independence. And here is an act of parliament that says Her Majesty, the Queen, has hereby granted Dominica under the following conditions. And the conditions are your constitution, which is a statutory instrument of an English parliamentary act. That's what they got us under, and our stupid leaders are allowing this to continue. Now, I haven't been involved because I know all of this and I know I'm alone, but this is going too far. This is really going too far. And so I'm entered the ring, and it's all fun to me because the almighty I know what's going on. But I'm telling you, as Dominicans, as West Indians, we really have to wake up as Black people. I mean, this is the most educated Black people in the world with land, respect, honor, those things that you can't buy, and they've thrown it away and gone to America. We really have to sort of retrench this. These are the island states of Africa. And, you know, that's my sadness. And Rastafari has tried to bring that. Do you know there's not one Rastafari MP in the Caribbean? Don't you think I would make a good
in the Caribbean?
Can you imagine? Not in Jamaica, not in Trinidad, not in Barbados. But there's some in Africa, one in New Zealand.
Wow, that's difficult to believe. That's difficult to believe.
No, but isn't that odd? And shouldn't that change? Not that I should be the one, but Rasta shun politics, and that's why it is. But
I want to take a quick break. We're going to watch a couple of videos. One of them is of you. And when we come back, you're going to tell me what has been your experience talking to the people on the ground, and their reaction to you jumping in and saying, "This is what I want to do to prevent this atrocity, at least to delay, prevent it from happening." So let's take a quick break, watch a couple of videos, and we'll be right back.
And I'd just like to tell your viewers to pardon my exuberance.
No, they're used to that.
Hi guys, it's Selena, and I will be live on Dissect Saturday, December 3rd at 7 p.m. Standard Eastern Time. You can watch on TDN TV, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Make sure you tune in so we can dissect my EP, alright? I'm possible.
Good day. My name is Henry Shillingford. I'm an attorney at law, and I've put myself forward as the independent candidate for the constituency of Grand Bay. I've lived in Grand Bay almost 20 years now, and I am very affectionate, great affection for the community. I have never intended to run for politics or be in politics. Quite frankly, my vision is as a spiritual Rastaman of myself. However, given the circumstances as it occurred, and as I understand the law and the Constitution, if I hadn't put up myself, the people of Grand Bay would have had no right to vote. So their fundamental right of independence and of democracy to be able to vote would have been taken away from them. And I thought that that was a terrible tragedy. And it reminded me that the real right we have under these democracies is not really to vote, but it's to put yourself forward to your community with your ideas. I have brilliant ideas. I think I will be an excellent representative for Grand Bay, and I look forward to having the opportunity to put my ideas before the people of Grand Bay. Please vote for me.
All right, listeners, welcome back. Tonight, we do it in the pre-show hour. As usual, we're talking about the election that was so unceremoniously sprung on Dominicans. And our society has just been put in a turmoil. I mean, Henry talks about folks like me who had to leave Dominica to try to get opportunities for our kids and those type of things. But more than that, we are busy focusing our attention and using our resources to fight people who want to be dictators, people who want to trample on our rights. The cost of that is that we're not paying attention to taking advantage of the opportunities of all the gifts that Dominica has to offer. Dominica has so many gifts to offer, but instead of our young people being able to focus and concentrate on starting businesses and growing industry and preserving Dominica, what we have to do is to fight the unnecessary fight that we're fighting right now. And so how do we get out of that? How do we regain our dignity? How do we reestablish the honor that we're supposed to feel as Dominican? And I bet even the folks who are supporters of the incumbent party, for whatever reason, I'm sure it's not sitting comfortably with them. I'm sure there is some indigestion there. That you have some, as Henry said, the values that are being exposed. It's a Gucci by there, it's an Italian suit over here, it's expensive shoes, and that type of artificialness that is so un-Dominican. That is the values that are put in front of our people. If you have a 20-year-old or 25-year-old in Dominica, that's all they know. They don't know the rest of it that makes us Dominican, because that is what's being pushed. Our prime minister, the hospital is not good enough for his children to be born there, so his children are born in the U.S. Dominican citizenship is not good enough for them, so they have to have American citizenship. All of those things that really and truly devalue us. And it's being done with the treasures that belong to us. And so not only the money that we lose, but we're losing 2 and 3 generations. Because as I said, if you think that you have a child who is 30 years old, a young woman who is 30 years old in Dominica, pretty much all they know is Labour Party and scary. Because by the time you're 10 and 12 years old and you come into your consciousness and your knowingness, what you know is what is there. That at the end of the week, every Wednesday, my mother have to go by the pal rep and beg and get something. And that's what you know. And that is destroying the country. So Henry was saying right before the break that he jumped in the race to try to at least delay the government just becoming the government and forming the government, and without people even having a right to cast their vote. But generally, I'm curious. Since that happened, I'm sure you've had several conversations on the ground. What is the vibe? What is the feeling you get? Because Grand Bay is the heartbeat of the resistance in Dominica. So you should be able to have a pulse of some kind of. I see Salisbury giving them competition now, but are you sensing that type of restlessness and fed upness that should be happening?
Quite frankly, in a word, as a witness, no.
Wow.
The apathy that you even reflected on earlier is real. And I'm trying to, with my passion, drive what is there, because a spark can make a big fire. And so my intent, as I say, is to make a spark, because I really don't understand this dullness. You understand? I mean, it's like Lale is, I know them, man, and even the ganja trade, like Ralph never, he understood that ganja up in the north of St. Vincent, these guys been voting Labor for 20 years and they still getting their ganja, their bread and butter. I mean, just look the other way then. Are you voting for me? So I'm quite shocked by all of this. And I'm telling you, this level of apathy, because I would have stayed far from this, has driven me, because, like, why am I here? I mean, it's, if I know this, then I have to make this step. And that's why, as you say, earlier, this apathy that you see, like Lennox, them cannot bring up, and all over the world you see this apathy. And that's why I say this radicalness. Why are we being subjugated to idiocy? Now, Skerritt is also connection on this higher level. I don't know if your audience is aware of this plan that's in effect. It's pretty clear. They can call conspiracy all they want, but this Reset 2030, I've known it. I'm a man that studies the Templars and from time and understand these things, how they operate on that level. But he's calling these election labor reset. That doesn't just happen. So these are important times, and these are important moments for all of us. And it's not to be apathetic now. I'm really feeling myself, even in this process, how necessary, like, my energy is to people. Because, I don't know what, but, I'm more radical than my children. I've always been that way from a teenager. It's just being me. I don't understand how people put up with stuff. You can just, just do it different. Like daylight savings time. Everybody just agree, and then it's an hour earlier. Tough shit. We all agree. Yo, Skerritt, you're getting out tomorrow. And 10,000 of us marching to Rosa, and you're moving up.
And he's out. It doesn't have to be 10,000. 2,000 people walking through it.
I don't understand why that can't happen. Even if 100 of Uno get killed, so what? Him move. And you show them who will rule. And these are not complicated matters. It's like Kudme. You understand? 5 people can do more in one day than one person can do in 5.
In 5 days. Yeah.
That's mathematical facts. It's objective reality. And that's my frustration. And so I'm just acting on it. I'm getting older. Maybe I should do something. I've been in the background a lot of times in the last years because it's been so wild. But it's a very important moment. And I think I'm going to use this opportunity. My greatest disappointment is how I didn't get more, or even the independence movement didn't get more financial support. I mean, I had estimated that if each of them had $10,000 each. I mean, they have no money, none of them, young guys. They have, and I'm not putting my money in this. I have one person, a businessman, who actually has about 30 employees in Grand Bay. Grand Bay has, talking about local issues, have 50 buses, going back, the largest contributor to Roseau economy by far, just based on how much buses, and that's how you run the economy. Bus drivers can shut down the country in a minute.
In a minute.
Bus drivers are the most powerful force in Dominica by any cut of the tape.
It's amazing how we have not been able to coordinate that. I mean, even I looked at the meeting that was
nothing interested in people even on that level. It's playing gangster. Real gangsters would have organized the bus drivers. So when I want to call the bus drivers out, I call them out. But they play in gangster because they're little fronts for white elites that want spaces and criminals like Skerritt that will agree to do anything. How can you have 5 diplomats under international under criminal custody or in jail for international financial crimes? Yo, if your diplomat is charged with wife beating, it's embarrassing. And you got 5 and you're still running a country, and you're still
running a country. Yeah.
These guys don't
but
let you do that unless you're
Henry,
doing something for
Henry,
them.
looking forward, and I hear what you say, and you say that part of why that happens is because the people who have any get up and go has gotten up and gone.
Exactly.
But where does that where is hope going to spring from? Where is hope going to spring from?
I'm telling you, if you want my straight answer,
Yes, I do.
Rastafari is the answer. Rastafari. Not everybody have to have dread, but it's clear. Natural liberty, eat what you grow, understand the kingship of self and the kingship of anciency, and the unity without uniformity. That the depth of understanding, red, gold, and green, and the cosmology, the music, the language. Now Rastafari itself has to up itself. But remember, not one leader of any caliber, of any kind, has said thank you, Rastafari, for making the Caribbean important. Of having the image of Bob Marley to be the most known image in the world. And Bob Marley never talked about Bob Marley. Bob Marley said he was Rastafari. As I say, I'm
Mhm.
Rastafari. We're all Rastafari. It's a really important concept, and we'll beat them guys down with that. It's not about dreads, it's about overstanding your unification with the universe as a black man and a black conscious man. I'm not talking about color of skin. And understand that the white elites, and I'm not talking about all white people, but the white monopoly capitalism is in every level a lie. Every level. Every level. And Rastafari's come the opposite. So we don't cut our hair, we don't shave our beards, we don't eat meat, you know. And so it's very important in terms of shifting everything about Babylon to something else. Because I'm telling you, there's no nice part of Babylon. It's so ugly now, right? That you have to stop playing that game, being in the stadium of that game, working in that game, watching the game on TV. You understand? You have to start a whole new game. And we can start it from the Caribbean and we can start it from Dominica. I assure you, but it takes will. I truly believe that.
So
Now, whether we do it, it's up to us. But that doesn't mean
so
that I can't. I can only say so before I fly into the universe.
but what is how is that going to be organized? I mean, you do
It's
have a
organized
few.
by most area. The best way I think could be organized, and what the national issue is, if you want to talk in practical terms. I can't play basketball in Grand Bay. I can't play football. I can't play cricket. The sports in Casa Bruce, in Pottersville, in Roseau, there's no basketball court. There's no place for people to play football. It's just a stadium. The sports facilities and the focus on youth is absolutely absurd. So a total focus on sports and using sports as a total disciplinary measurement like you'd use the military in other societies, and teaches all the concepts. My father was a referee. I played for the national team in basketball here. My son has played for the national football team. Sports as a metaphor to teach leadership, team building, character, and then use the natural environment to train. We're not running on flats. We're running up hills. Maybe we'll become better
Okay.
than the Jamaicans because the Jamaicans trained on dirt. That's their trick. Everybody trains on dirt. Like in Brazil, you all play on flat futsal until you're 11. You can't go on grass. That's why they learn handling. So it's cultures you build. Now, this takes the leadership that this guy is talking about, and he doesn't represent at all. And
Right.
so this lacking of leadership, and I have an idea, and I'm working through the Charles Foundation. What I'd like to start is a school of leadership, young people between 25 and 40, and they can be, trained about history and what was the civil rights movement. The World War II is not taught in any Caribbean curriculum, and I've had children taught in Barbados, Trinidad, and Dominica. World War II is not part of the curriculum. Like so, the World War II that formed, IFIs and the whole Bretton Woods and the whole structure,
Yeah, the
architectural,
monetary system and all of those things.
financial
Yeah.
structure. Remember, architectural too, because they blew up everything. So all these square buildings and these, which were really German, these very square, no feel buildings that you see in Manhattan and everywhere. These are cold structures that lead to cold human beings. Look, I'm shutting down. I don't know back.
No, we're here. Did you get? Oh, I think Henry Henry Battery died. But you know, Henry's making a point. Um, and he says Rasta, not necessarily dreadlocks, but the whole embodiment of who you are and the grounding of yourself in what is natural, I think is what he's alluding to. And he's saying do it through sports. And I think that's a great opportunity because the current government has destroyed the facilities for sports in Dominica. I saw last week somebody posted a video of the multi-complex stadium at Stock Farm. It's abandoned. You go to Castle Bruce, they're doing construction and they're dumping excess soil and all kinds of stuff on the playing field at Castle Bruce. They turn the Windsor Park where all young boys in Roseau could go and run their ball. They turn it into a stadium, so now it's not accessible to the young people to play. And so I think Henry had his hand on the pulse. I think he recognized he's right on the money that the disorganization of sports in Dominica, the disorganization of sports in Dominica was key to getting young people not being able to associate themselves in teams and to work together to common in towards a common goal, common causes. And so the when you look at various aspects of life in Dominica, you realize that this administration has systematically dismantled the fabric, the very fabric of Dominican society. This this government has dismantled it. I mean, our healthcare system, we had primary care healthcare system that everybody was jealous of. We had it so organized that no matter where in Dominica you were within arm's reach a call or a professional healthcare person, a midwife, a district doctor, that sort of thing. And it was structured where stuff would move up into central the hospital if it became severe. But most of our health needs could be taken care of at the community level. That has gone, that has been dismantled. We look at our education system, that has been dismantled pretty much. When you look at the curriculum and you see a young person getting 15 CXCs, who gets 15 CXCs? What does that person have to do? Um, it suggests a watered down curriculum. And if not, it suggests a school system that doesn't leave room for a young person to develop. You don't have time to go play football, you don't have time to play cricket because you have homework to do for 15 subjects up to the time that you are graduating high school. So the education system has been gone. Our local government system, where you had central government, but you had village councils that were running things in the villages. And the villagers could go to the village council and help them to solve needs that they had. The village council would come by if you're doing construction and see what were your plans for disposing of water. If you're raising chickens or pigs and you were being a nuisance to your neighbor, the village council would come and help you to solve that. And they were funded. The local government system has been dismantled. We were trying to do some stuff in the community and even the sports committee. When I was growing up, we had cricket league and football league, and there were some people who just love sports. And therefore, they would come together and they would be the sports committee. And they would coordinate when we play football, when you play cricket, who cuts the grass. If there's some work to do, we come together and do it. Even that is controlled now by central government. If Dominicans are not opening their eyes and see that what this government is doing is dismantling all of the institutions and all of the fabric that made Dominica what it was, then you definitely blinded and you need to take those red sunglasses off your eyes so you can see some light. Otherwise, what exactly are you trying to leave for your kids? When we elect somebody, and I did this message on Sunday when I was invited on Civic Vibe, when we elect somebody into office, they are given the title honorable. And you know what that means when you say somebody is honorable? It means that when Henry Shillingford presents himself to Grand Bay people and they vote for me, I want to be your representative. Henry Shillingford is saying, guys, I'm an honorable person. And you are honorable people. I am honorable to enough to be able to represent you. And when the people go to the polls and they vote you, they are confirming that they think that you are honorable. And so we are honorable people, but who are we? I, you, each individual person has to make sure that they understand that we live in an honorable society, so therefore each of us has to have that honor. When you elect somebody to represent you, that person has to be honorable. Otherwise, they're not representing your values. If you have somebody in office who is behaving in a way that you would not want to train your children to behave, that person is misrepresenting your values. And you have to talk to them to make them change it, or you have to remove them. And when you see the prime minister, who everything has to go through him, and he's the biggest figure in the country, he's the biggest personality in the country, and you see him on the campaign trail and he's calling people names and he's denigrating people who are working hard for a living. Is that the value that you have for yourself? And folks say, oh, it's campaign, it's politics, people say things. No. It's like saying that when your husband is drunk, if he beats you, okay, he was drunk, that's what happens. No. There are certain basic and fundamental levels between below which we're not supposed to go. And therefore we expect better. And when that person who represents you is not doing better, and you allow him to continue to represent you, that makes you not better. And so we have to be able to say, this is who I am, this is who I represent, these are the values that I want to pass on to my children. How can you want to pass on values to your children and then your children see you supporting somebody who doesn't demonstrate any of those values? Your children see that you have to go and beg a politician so that you can send them to school or you can buy shoes for them. That is not Dominican. We Dominicans are used to be having their own money. And no matter how basic it was, we would build our own house. We had this saying that cleanliness is next to godliness. So no matter what house you have, as long as your house is clean and your yard is clean, you were proud. Now you have a government that has reduced us. And there's no reason why we should be reduced like that. To where if they make us believe that if they don't give us a house, we cannot get a house for ourselves. And when they give you the house, they don't give you the title for the house. So you're a slave because you don't want to appear. You're afraid to stand up by the road and listen to somebody in case they're saying something that's against the government and somebody see you standing there. And they say, oh, Tony was by the road listening to Lennox. Tony's not, so Tony is a your ability person. The next day you get in a notice that the house is no longer yours, or you get some other thing out. That is what you want to give to your constituency. And people say all kinds of nonsense like, oh, United Workers' Party supporters get even more than Labour people and all of that nonsense. We know that is not true. We know that we see that there are supporters of the government after the hurricane who had building materials sitting in the yard rotting on their tarpaulin, and there are folks who still haven't gotten their property fixed. So, folks, what I want to leave with this hour, this pre-show hour, as I call it, is that ask yourself, truly ask yourself, that person that is representing you and belonging to that organization called the Labour Party, the values that they represent, is that the values that you genuinely, and don't ask it yourself in public, go into your quiet place, go into your bedroom, go into your chambers, wherever it is that you pray, wherever it is you reflect on yourself. Consider the behavior of the people that represent you and ask yourself, are those the values that I would be proud of if I saw my child behaving that way? And if your answer is no, you need to talk to that person who represents you and say, I think you need to represent me better. And if you think talking is not going to help, then it's time to change who represents you. Otherwise, you have to accept the fact that you're not honorable like you think you are. You're not as good as you think you are. The people that represent you are actually representing you. And when they denigrate hardworking people, when they call people names, when they insult people, when they behave like Malkase and Weber guy. That is who you are, because that is who you choose to represent you, and that is who you continue to allow to represent you. And that's what I will leave it right now. We are pretty much at the end of the hour, at the pre-show hour, because this weekend interview is usually 8 to 9, but because of the elections, we've been starting an hour early, and I've been enjoying it. I've really been enjoying coming and talking to you about it. And so I'm hoping that at least I can reach a few people, because the idea is to be introspective. The idea is to be able to look at yourself and say, I'm making that decision not because my grandfather was labor, not because my mother was labor, not because. I am making that decision because the person that is standing in front of me now in that red shirt is that person's behavior, is that person's character representative of me? Because when you vote for somebody to represent you, you're saying, this is who I am. This is who I am. These are the values that I have. And that person shares those values. And therefore, I endorse 100% the behavior of that person. We cannot give that person a pass. To whom much is given, much is expected. So if you behave honorably, that person who you give the power to represent you should be twice as honorable as you, because he has to represent you, he has to represent your neighbor, he has to represent Sheila, he has to represent Marva, he has to represent Joseph, he has to represent everybody. So that person has to be 2 and 3 times more honorable than you. They cannot be less honorable than you, and you give them a pass. Well, they're busy and they're this and it's politics. And no, you have to be able to say, I want you to represent me, and therefore I need you to reflect the values that I am proud to pass on to my children. And if you cannot say that, it's time to change. It's time to change. And change is not bad. Change is not bad. It's okay, because even in a football game, you have a superstar, and he's a superstar and he scores a lot of goals. But when he becomes unruly and think that you cannot do without him, you need to put him on the bench for a minute. And I bet you when he comes back into the game, he's going to be even twice as good as he was before, because you've shown him that there are certain levels that you will not accept, and therefore he has to understand. He has to bring up his game. He has to bring up his game, because when he goes on that team, he represents you. And no matter how much talent he has, if on a weekend he's a Weber guy and he makes you shame, then he does not belong on your team. He should not represent you. And so, listeners, that's the appeal. Wednesday, next week, Tuesday, I think is the 6th, is election. I am asking you to vote wisely. And if you're not comfortable with what is happening in terms of who represents you, don't vote. And if you're scared that they're going to know who you vote for, they cannot know who you vote for. You can show up and you can go into the polling booth and just don't vote for nobody. Or you can spoil the ballot. They have no way of doing it. It's just a frightening thing. They have no idea who you vote for. So I'm encouraging you to use your vote as a protest. One, you either stay home and don't vote, or two, you can go into the polling booth. When you are in that polling booth, they cannot know who you voted for. You can spoil your ballot, you can vote for somebody else, or you can choose not to vote. All right? So folks, examine that, question yourself. Let us make ourselves proud. Dominica deserves much better than Dominica has been getting. Dominica doesn't deserve that every time it rains, we have all this flooding and all this kind of mismanagement of our resources and all that. Please do it for Dominica. Decide how. Be independent. Decide what you're going to do. But you can either stay home and don't vote. One, you can spoil your ballot. Two, you can vote for somebody else. But let somebody stop taking you for granted and assuming that you're going to vote for them no matter what. That is the worst place you can put yourself. All right, I'm going to stop here because we have a second hour. 8 to 9 hour on next week is World Soils Day. And we have some really recent experiences of the mismanagement or the result of the mismanagement of our soils. It is so important. The theme for this year is soil where our food comes from, where everything comes from as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to be joined shortly by two real guys who are dedicated to soil. They are soil scientists. So stay tuned, listeners. We're going to break up this first hour of this pre-show, and I'm going to be joined shortly by two very brilliant sons of the soil. And we're going to be talking about soil and its importance and how we can take care of it and create awareness around it, because December 5th, next week, is World Soils Day. So thank you so much for joining me early, and we'll be right back. Don't hang up. Just stay right there. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking about World Soils Day.
Presented by. People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
If you live in Canada, the US, and the UK and are looking for Dominica products including cocoa sticks, bay rum, coffee, soaps, crafts, and other popular Dominica items, then look no further. You can now shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, a secure, easy-to-navigate website selling a wide variety of Dominica-made and Dominica-inspired products. When you shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, you are helping to grow Dominica's economy. Go to BuyDominicaOnline.com and enjoy home away from home.
All right, listeners, welcome back to This Week in Interview with your host, Anthony Drago. It's a pleasure to be here with you for this, our episode of This Week in Interview. It is the 30th of November. It's almost the end of the year. Can you believe it? 30 days to the end of the year. Tomorrow is December. And so, folks, welcome. As we rush towards the end of the year, I really appreciate those of you who join me every Wednesday. I really look forward to your company every Wednesday night. And I look forward to the conversations that I have. Those of you in Dominica on RVR Jams Radio, DigiPlay Channel 59, thank you for tuning in. I hope all is well on the Nature Isle. I know elections are coming up and there's all kinds of controversies, but just stay strong, stay steadfast. Make good decisions when you go to the polls, if you go to the polls. Tonight, my topic for tonight is soil, because next week, Tuesday, the 5th of December, is it Tuesday? I think it's Monday. Next week, Monday, the 5th of December, is World Soils Day, and the theme is soil, where our food comes from. And I am so fortunate and privileged and honored. I have two very brilliant young men. They're both soil scientists. They're both PhDs in their field. They're passionate about their field. They work in their field, and they are at the top and the peak of their careers. And I have the privilege, and that's one of the things I enjoy about being the host of This Week in Interview. I get to talk to these great people that I otherwise most likely would not get to interact with. I feel extremely, extremely fortunate. And on top of that, I get to share those conversations with you. And so tonight is one of those special nights. We have, two really young sons of the soil in the person of Mr. Dave Lloyd. He is managing director of EcoApp Inc. in Dominica. and Dr. Mervin St. Luce, who resides in Canada. Um, and they are joining me tonight, and we are talking about soils. And so I'm super, super, super honored for the privilege to spend time with this gentleman. I always enjoy being with folks who are passionate about what they do, and are just super professional, and I love to bring the conversations to you. The theme for this year is, as I said, soil, where our food comes from. And we talk about soil and we think of it as dirt. And sometimes when we want to say something has no value, we say it's dirt cheap, it's dirt, it's dirty. Um, but it's far from the truth. I think next to air, or even air, the most valuable thing that we have is soil. Because where does the air come from? The air comes that we breathe, the oxygen comes from trees. Where do trees come from? Trees come from the soil. So the idea is that we need to raise our awareness of this value that we have. We walk on it, we dig it, we throw it away, we do all kinds of stuff with it, but it has been faithful to us. And so join me, listeners and viewers, in welcoming to this week in interview Dr. Mervin St. Luce and Dr. Davidson Lloyd. Dave had been on with us before. Dr. Luce is your first time. So I'm extremely happy to make your acquaintance and to welcome you to the program. And because you are new on the block, I'm going to make you go first and tell you welcome and to just let the audience know who you are, Dr. St. Luce.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you loud and clear, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for this invitation. So yeah, my name is Mervin St. I'm originally from the village of Paybush, and I currently reside in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, in Canada. I worked in Dominica for a short period of time with the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute. I did my bachelor's and master's degree at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago. And then I did my PhD in soil science at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. So now I am a research scientist in soil fertility and cropping systems at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And it's a very unique opportunity that I have to conduct research and to sort of follow my passion. And looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have about World Soil Day and about soils in general.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited. Dave, it's always a pleasure talking to you because you have so much to share and you share it generously. So welcome back to this week in interview. It's a pleasure. I still want you to introduce yourself because we pick up quite a few new viewers every time, especially since I've been doing this politics thing. We pick up a few new people. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and to basically tell them who you are and a brief introduction of what you do.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you again for having me here for the second time. My name is Dave Lloyd. I call myself an agroecologist, and we basically try to apply, ecological concepts and principles to the design and development and management of sustainable agricultural systems. I have worked in Dominica, well, almost all my life, basically, apart from times that I went to study. Um, Foremost in the banana industry. So, yes, did a lot of work within the banana sector, but agriculture generally, and more so of late, more on the environmental side, looking at sustainable land management. All these are intertwined. Originally from High Street and Emsall, with strong connection to Collyho, where my dad is from. So a lot of my background and groundings in agriculture would stem from there, and also the agricultural program at the SMA. Um, yeah, so that's it. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Good night, Mervin. I'm happy to link with you and to network with. We've started that, and I hope we can continue to let that grow, and for the benefit of our homeland.
Excellent. Same here.
So it's St. Luce, Mervin.
Saint Luce. Yeah.
Yeah, is that you that typed in and you said that you're from Guadeloupe or somebody else
I
typed that?
think that's my dad probably.
Okay.
My dad lives in Guadeloupe, so most likely
In
it's him.
Guadeloupe.
We have the
In
same
Guadeloupe.
name. We have the
Okay,
same name.
okay. Mm-hmm. So, listeners, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this Wednesday night. I I want to open this discussion in a very organic and grassroots kind of way, so that we can identify the people who listen to us and identify with us. Because I grew up in Castle Bruce. I grew up in Castle Bruce. Every week you're in the garden, you're planting food, you're carrying food home, you're eating from the soil. But soil, we take it for granted. Although I must say, growing up, I met measures in place to prevent, soils from washing away, and different practices and so on. But we took soil for granted. And so I want both of you all to just talk about what is soil and what is the contribution that soil is making to our everyday lives, that we need to recognize the value of soil. Moving on, let you go first.
Okay, yeah. So soil is a non-renewable resource. We have to look at it from that perspective. And well, from a simple definition, we can say that soil is a medium in which plants grow, but it's much more than that. Soil affects the water cycle, affects nutrient cycles, also from the clean air that we breathe, pollutants that go through the soil. So it serves as a barrier as well. Um, we all are aware of climate change, carbon cycling. Soil plays a very important role from that perspective. And actually, soils contain the largest pool of carbon in based on sort of terrestrial carbon, and that means land-based systems. So soils contain the most carbon from a land perspective. So even more than trees, actually. So we need to sort of manage our soils in an efficient manner to have sustainable soil management for this generation as well as the future generations. The population of the world is increasing, and we need to produce more food to feed that growing population, but also uh, arable lands are decreasing. Most of our fertile lands are being converted to urban areas. So we have to produce more food with less land. So less resources. We have to be protective of our environment. We have to manage whatever inputs that we put into our agricultural systems. And if we are going to be able to feed ourselves, improve our economies, soil management has to play a vital role moving forward. And I think this is one of the reasons why the FAO is, especially this year, sort of making it, sort of increasing awareness of our soils, and sort of from this is where our food comes from. Beyond agriculture, soil is also important in terms of building our structures, so providing support as well, recreation contributions as well. But from an agricultural and food production perspective, uh, this is critical, and we have to. I want to reiterate that it is a non-renewable resource, even if we may think that it is renewable, but it is basically non-renewable.
I like that you started that is non-renewable and you ended that is non-renewable. That is one of the most important messages. Dave, I want to go to you. And same thing. Just talk about it's your field. Just play in the dirt, so to speak. Let's talk about dirt and bring it down to our listeners level. People like me who have taken it for granted for over 50 years, and just help me to become more aware of why I need to realize that soil is treasure.
Okay, I like the slogan that says "Don't treat soil like dirt." I tend to carry it around a lot.
Don't treat soil
And
like that.
no, don't treat soil like dirt. Soil is a living entity, a living system made up of both, biological and non-biological components. But to me, to drive home the importance of soil is to link it to human health. Without a healthy soil, we can't have healthy people, simply put, because it's the source of of important nutrients that the plants need, and we need the plants to provide the food. Hence the theme, the connection with the food with the soil. I'm not sure if it's because it's under our feet and we walk on it all day and so on that you know we don't seem to appreciate it that much. But really, it's important for life and our existence, and as I said, human health. Um, Over the world and including in Dominica, we see it now based on the treatment or mistreatment of the land. We find with the slightest of rain, we see our rivers silted up and so on. And as Mervin pointed out, it's a non-renewable resource. So if it's rains we get and the flooding and the erosion that we have, you're not going to replace it. Certain nutrients, and particularly, I mean, we might get to that in terms of the parts of the soil, but the top of the soil, the topsoil is where most of that nutrients is concentrated, and when you lose it, as you said, it's lost, and it's not renewed. Importantly, soil, the connection with soil and also water must be made. Um, our If we take Dominica as our example, and we have uh, Dominica has identified about 35 watersheds across the country, and these serve to retain with the forest cover, of course, but the soil is where that water is stored. And we would see that even with an extended period of drought, that the rivers still flow, you know so this should bring to mind to all that the soil is very, very important. And Dominica, as we know it and enjoy it, would not be able to continue and remain for future generations if we continue to disregard the soil and the important role that it plays.
Right. I'm going to stay with you a little bit, Dave, because you started to hint about the structure of the soil. And you started to talk about the topsoil and the different layers and the different roles of it. So Going to good dig into that a little bit. Let people understand that you really, really, really have as much of that soil as you may think you have, which means that you really have to be paying attention to preserving that topsoil. So talk about the soil structure, and you can even go to some of the maybe some of the habits that maybe would help to save that.
Okay, well, most soil occurs in layers that we call horizons, basically. So at the top, and if we consider Dominica, Dominica is a volcanic island that our soils largely are formed from volcanic rock that has been weathered over time. And with the rainfall, because Dominica is also mountainous, the rainfall impacts the way the soils are formed and the type of soils that are formed. So if you start from the coast going up to the central ranges that spans Dominica, you will get a change in the rainfall distribution. With starting on the coast, it's lower and it's highest at the top. So that has influenced the type of soils that are formed. But generally, you would find the top layers, the upper few 4 to 5 inches of soil, um, where you have a concentration of organic matter. It occurs. You find it's the color is usually darker, and that's because you have all the plant material, the leaves that are being decomposed, and it's all part of cycling, really. um uh if we really have to look at it in depth. So you have those horizons. There are soils that are formed in areas that are waterlogged, where it remains wet all the time, although we don't have too many of those. But you would find those soils, the color would be quite different. So there's a tendency to think of soils as a homogeneous, or it's same all around. But really and truly, in every direction that you go, horizontally, the soil is a bit different. We've been able, or there are about 5 major soil types in Dominica, but really about 3 or 4 are dominating, in terms of the soil type. But even within that, you're going to get some differences. Even at the unit of the farm, you would find some farmers will tell you, there in that section there, I normally do very well, and somewhere else it's not that good. So
Mhm.
you have that those changes, and it requires, in terms of our understanding of the nature and the properties of soils. For instance, in Dominica, we have a issue based on the rainfall and the type of soils that we have, that our soil acidity is generally low. Our soils are acid in most respects, and that, in terms of the management of the soil, is important to recognize those limitations. Yes, we like to talk that we have healthy soils, and we have fertile soils, and so on. However, we cannot take that for granted, and some areas, based on the management or the poor management, would lose that fertility over time, right? And important for us is the maintenance of the organic matter component, that which you get from the rotted material, from manure, from compost, and so on, can impact the functioning of our soils. And we have a situation, for instance, where um, an element called phosphorus, important for root and root growth, and generally for development of cells of plants, and so on. where the type of soils we have doesn't make that nutrient readily available, and that's why we would find that we need to apply a lot of fertilizers high in phosphates when we have to produce root crops, for instance. But by maintaining a good organic matter level and adding organic matter level, we can make the phosphorus that is actually there, make it more readily available to plants. And these are some of the things that we need to understand better about our soils and how best to manage and care for them, so we can sustain food production for for as long as possible. All these are things that we can do better at, I believe, if we pay more attention and more focus as to some of the basic principles and the information that is readily available, but somehow we find it difficult to put it in practice.
All right, thank you for that. Mervin, I'm going to come to you because you currently residing in Canada. And so when we in the Caribbean think of America and Canada, we say, well, these guys have all kinds of technology and and all of these different things. You said that your area of study, area of work is soil fertility and cropping system. So most of the times you talk to folks about detriment to the environment or to our soils or to our water. And in the back of your mind, sometimes people think we can use technology to solve the problem. So is that true? Where you are in Canada, where you have a lot more resources than in the Caribbean, can we really um, afford to mismanage our soils, knowing that we can just add fertilizer or somehow use technology to maintain the performance and of the soil?
That's a very good question. So I'm in the Canadian prairies, and the prairies basically the food basket in Canada. Um, when if someone tells you in the prairies, as an example, you could get a dog and let it run away from you, and you will see it for days. Yes, that's possible. That's how flat it is here. Now, technology is critical for improving management of soils. However, it's not the answer. Um, Education is important. Adoption of best management practices are maybe the most important. Um, in the prairies, especially in the dry, semi-arid areas, soil organic matter is very low. Soils are lighter in color. Um, Decades ago, um, most farmers after harvest would till the soil and leave sort of no residues on the surface. I don't know if you have heard of what they call the dirty 30s or the dust bowl. That was a consequence of these management practices. And
Mm-hmm.
over time, through research and as well as technological advancement in terms of equipment for seeding into standing residue, a new practice was developed, which is called no-till or direct seeding. So that means that there is a standing stubble or standing crop residue from the previous crop that was harvested. That serves as a barrier. It reduces wind erosion, reduces water erosion. It also, especially in Canada, serves as a means of increasing soil moisture by snow trapping. Um, Moisture, especially in the dry areas, is the key. It is the most limiting factor for crop production. So there's a combination. It's never going to be one size fits all or one thing is going to solve um, any issue. We have to look at it from a holistic perspective and apply sort of a systems-based approach to managing our soils, improving productivity and sustainability. I also want to mention resilience, and from that resilience, what I mean by that is the ability of our systems to continue to produce food irrespective of factors, either biological or non-biological. So for example, if there's a drought, can we still produce sufficient food? And that is going to be a result of increased soil organic matter. Soil organic matter, as Dave mentioned, this is the key component in soils. So soils basically are made up of organic compounds. We have physical characteristics, so like silt, clay, sand content, and air. But the organic matter, you can think of it as a sponge as well as a source and a sink. Source meaning by providing nutrients, and a sink meaning it is where the carbon comes in. All of the nutrient cycling takes place. So carbon is basically the plant carbon that is added to the soil. So if I use Dominica as an example, yeah, we're talking about Canada, but if I use Dominica as an example, on the West Coast, where it is typically drier, you will realize the soils have a lighter color. That means they have low organic matter content. And why is that? Because we have less primary productivity, so less plant production. We have smaller trees, mostly shrubs, so we have lower carbon input. On the East Coast, where we have more rainfall, we have sort of forests. Our soils are deep, high in organic matter, because there's a lot of plant carbon input. So we have to manage the soils based on their characteristics, based on their inherent properties. And it requires technology, it requires adoption of best management practices that are sort of specific to the soils that we have. We can't manage all soils the same. We have to develop practices that are suitable for the particular soils that we are working with. So in Eastern Canada, it's sort of similar to Dominica in terms of its humid, moist environment. In Western Canada, where I'm in the prairies, it's dry, very dry. So the management are different. In Eastern Canada, no tillage, while it is important, it also has negative consequences in terms of in spring when farmers are ready to seed, sometimes the soils are too wet. That delays the seeding because it's no-till, it conserves more moisture. It takes longer to warm up, and it cannot seed if the soil is too cold. In the West, no-till is king. Most of the lands here are on the no-till. A very small percentage is tilled. And this is because we're trying to protect the soil from erosion and as well as conserve moisture. Right now, it's winter, it's snowing. If you drive around the prairies, a field that has standing stubble, you will see much more snow on these lands versus a field that was tilled, because the wind is blowing the snow out of that land. And anytime you lose that snow, next spring you have less moisture. So productivity is going to be lower next year compared to if you had more snow trapping. So so I will just end by saying it's not just technology. We need research to develop best management practices. We need farmers to adopt best management practices, and of course, we need technology to assist us and also to help us to make better decisions.
That is awesome. That is fascinating. I have to take a break because we are 8:37. Let's a quick word from our sponsors. And when we come back, Dave, I want us to talk about, this man is saying we're under no till and till. That means people telling people what they can do on their land and what they cannot do. Um, it's something that we probably need in Dominica more than they need in Canada. We'll explore those areas when we come back. Listeners, stay tuned. Let's take a quick break forward from our sponsors.
Presented by.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
Good evening again. I thought we were going to have a couple more commercials, but no, that's fine. More time to talk with my guest. My guest tonight is Dr. Mervin St. And Dr. Dave Lloyd. They're both soil scientists. I'm calling them both soil scientists, even if they have their own specific areas of qualification and representation. Dave, I'm going to come to you talk in response to some of the things that we hear Mervin is able to work with in Canada. But before you do that, you say you're the managing director of EcoApp. I want you to take a couple minutes and tell the listeners what is EcoApp, what services you provide, and if they need your services, how they can contact you.
Okay, EcoApp is a consulting company that I operate in conjunction with other professionals, most of them Dominicans, but some are not. We do work in Dominica. Now, most of what we are doing is around sustainable land management, but we also do some work in other Caribbean islands. We've worked in Bahamas, Grenada. To some extent, we've done some things in Belize and so on. So we offer the services. Mostly, you would find international agencies trying to get things done in Dominica would use our services. But just like today, we had some training for the forestry staff, looking at watershed management and improving, forest management generally. So these are some of the things that we do at EcoApp. My number is 767-265-4399. You can reach me that way. You can also reach me on davidson.lloyd@gmail.com.
Right. So before you jump off so for example, if I have 10 acres of land in Castle Bruce and I want to do the best with it in terms of what to plant, how to plant, and so on, is that some of the consultancy that you provide, some of the services that you provide?
That's some of what that we do. Unfortunately, most of that people, a lot of people are not willing or unable to pay for those services. So but that's some of what we do and offer.
Okay.
Yes.
So also, do you do environmental impact assessment or those kind of things?
Oh yes, that's something that I omitted, but yes, we we have done, and we do those as well. Most times we undertake them, but because it's not strictly a soil science discipline, we would have other professionals that we engage to work along with to get this done.
Right. Okay. Well, that's is really good to know that those services are available. And I think the more people are aware that of the benefit to the sustainability, and I hear Mervin talk about resilience, where if you plan it properly, your soil can give you continuous and repeated good yields. So you work in Dominica. Mervin said he worked with Cardi for a while. And we hear about the importance of soil management system, of being able to look at the whole ecosystem and decide what's the best approach. Simple things like don't till to plant. Um, is Dominica anywhere? Let me not try to cover the question. So, but where are we in terms of where even the authorities, the government, the Ministry of Agriculture? You said you did some training for forestry in watershed management. Where are we in terms of being able to have a management system that we can use to properly manage our soil?
I think sadly we are not where we could be and should be. Um, Dominica, I mean, it's a challenge in terms of our topography. So we are presented with certain challenges. Our topography is one, being a very mountainous country island. Um, that sloping land presents a certain challenge for agricultural production. It means the risk is of soil erosion, well, and the topography coupled with very high rainfall,
High
and
rainfall.
now with the impacts of climate change, that we get intense rainfalls or intense storms and so on more frequently. It's even places a greater challenge. Unfortunately, though, if I can, recall my entry into agriculture and the world of work in Dominica in that line, 30 years ago, thereabout, to me, we had better systems, better support services for agriculture. We also had better trained people within the system providing services. I will use, for example, the banana industry. We had Winban, which had a soils lab in St. Lucia that would do soil sampling and soil analysis. So you would get a very good picture of the situation on the ground, and the authorities had programs in place to respond to the challenges. So our fertilizer formulations and our guidance and to farmers in terms of management, to me, was much better. You had the farmer to extension officer contact was a lot higher. You had more people employed, provided those services. So that should probably paint a picture to you as to with regards to the support services. But I want to touch on the challenge, because the challenge is even getting a bit greater.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, we had a system of production that relied more on tree crops, right? You had other crop. I mean, bananas was really big, but bananas was interplanted with your citrus and cocoa and
Coconut,
no
coffee,
coconuts.
avocado. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now we've coming now. Most of our farmers are elderly and so on, and now you find the availability of planting material. It's an issue, but also the willingness of farmers, or the not just the willingness, I wouldn't say, but the confidence
Mm-hmm.
of farmers with the challenges of road access and cost of inputs and cost of labor and labor issues. You find they would gravitate more towards short-term crops to have a higher, a quicker turnover. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so these short-term crops are your gingers, your I mean shorter term,
Dashing. Yeah.
dashing, yams, and so on. And all these crops, what is common with them is that the level of manipulation that you have to do to the soil. You either have to make ridges for your ginger, you have to make mongs for your yams, you know,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
so on. So it involves extensive tillage, right? In terms of when you had bananas, you just dug a hole and put the plant in, right? You're not, sort of tilling above the soil so much. When you're doing that, and especially on slopes, you increase the risk of soil erosion, right?
Right. Okay.
Um, we also have a situation, not in terms of changing dynamics in the agricultural landscape, where we have now that, well, I think a very high percentage of our farmers and farm labor is of our Haitian brothers and sisters, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
to slide them, but the kind of the connection that and it's something we've lost, I think, or we're losing, or probably lost, that connection with the land. Where growing up in Qualiho, I remember, my grandmother saying, "Oh, this tree, or neighbor string, or whoever neighbor string was buried in that tree, and that is yours," and so on. And you have a connection with the tree because it's your tree. You want to see it grow and bear fruit, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we seem to be losing that sort of connection. So just to make that story, or we've changed. The cropping system has changed, and unfortunately it's changed in a way that is not consistent, or with the type of landscape that we have, right? And the sort of care that we need to have for the soil and the land. Yeah, we seem to be working against ourselves in that respect.
And so in that regard, what Mervin was talking about is that we really need a little more control in terms of what, even if the land belongs to you, if your land is a certain topography, a certain shape, a certain slope, you cannot do certain things to it, or this is how you should do it, and you should be expected to follow some basic guidelines. I have a collage of photos that I put together showing our different food production. I don't know if it can be shown while the guest is talking, if we have that facility. Um, just yeah. So yeah. So you just scroll through some of those photos. Those are local photos from Dominica, by the way. I just wanted to run them to give put a little optimistic face on it that we are producing. Um, and Dominicans, we want to really encourage people to go back to the production of food. You know, um, Mervin, you said you worked at CADI, which is the Caribbean Agricultural Research Development Institute, before you went to Canada. So that means you have some familiarity with the what would you say the like at the research, what was being discovered that was required, and those kind of things. I don't know how you can talk about that in terms of, I know you're not in the Caribbean, but you should. I think you're still connected though. From your experience in what they do in Canada, and from your experience what we do in the region, what are some of the steps that we need to be taking to really be able to preserve our soil, to be able to produce that beautiful food that we see from some of those photos?
Yeah, so my stint with Cardi was quite short. So my
Mm-hmm.
career is actually longer outside of the Caribbean than in the Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
from a professional perspective. And at Cardi, my role was basically in hot peppers and pineapple. So I worked a lot with hot
Okay.
peppers and pineapple. So in terms of what can be done, so we need to first of all consider that the soil is vital to our existence, and we need to treat it as such and not as dirt. It is not dirt. So that's the first thing that we need to recognize. Um, then we need to be able to develop management systems that are suitable for the type of soils that we are working with. As I mentioned earlier, if we are going to treat all of our soils on the same playing field, same level, it's not going to work. Dave mentioned about the soils in Dominica are acidic, and because they are acidic, they require special management. Actually, in the prairies, in Canadian prairies, most of the soils here are alkaline, so they have carbonate, calcium carbonate. So the pH is above, most of them are above 8. However,
Mm.
due to the decades use of fertilizer, particularly ammonium-based fertilizers, the pH is decreasing. So some soils are becoming acidic, and this phenomenon is also taking place in North Dakota and Montana, which are just basically south of where I am. So we need to be able to manage fertilizers properly because yes, they are vital for producing food, but they also have a detrimental effect on the soils if they are not managed properly. They can also affect the microorganisms that live in the soil. The soil is a living ecosystem, so whatever we do to the soil, how we treat it, has positive consequences as well as negative consequences. Precision agriculture is increasing in popularity and adoption. So that's another way that we can approach soil management. And precision agriculture, but I mean, is even within a field, we have variability in terms of the soil type as well as nutrient content, organic matter content. So we generally, as far as I can remember, when I was in Dominica, we generally apply fertilizer across a field in a uniform way. But Dave mentioned a very important point. There are certain parts of the field that may have more nutrients inherently than other parts. But if we have applied, let's say manure or fertilizer, the same rate everywhere, that means areas that are already high, these areas are we have over applied fertilizer. Basically, that is a loss economically and also it poses a threat to the environment. Precision agriculture can help to do that. So we manage soils either by zones or that requires mapping, digital mapping or extensive soil sampling analysis to be able to detect those differences. So I think moving forward, we can't manage soils as we used to. We have to develop new approaches that are sustainable, that will enhance efficiency. We all are aware the cost of fertilizer, especially in the last year and a half, has more than doubled globally. That means it becomes more expensive for a farmer to have the inputs necessary. So efficiency becomes critical. And how can we do that? First, we need to know what we have and know what we need. But most times we just apply fertilizers. We do not even consider the requirement of the crop that we are growing and what is the capability of our soils to provide. I will mention that even in Canada, while the resources are more abundant than in Dominica or in the Caribbean, it is important to understand that soils inherently supply nutrients to plants. The fertilizers that we apply are supposed to be just as a supplement. So even in Canada, nitrogen use efficiency. So by that I mean the amount of nitrogen that the plant uses based on the amount that we apply as fertilizer is less than 50%. And that's even on a global perspective, it's ranging from 40 to 60%. So that means even applying fertilizer does not mean that the plant is going to use that fertilizer. It will likely use the nutrient from the soil. So more of the nutrients that the plants take up will come from the soil versus the fertilizer. Phosphorus is quite different, especially in an acidic soil. So what we may see is aluminum and iron complexes, meaning aluminum and iron in the soil are going to bind phosphorus, and then it's not going to make that phosphorus available to the plant in an acidic soil. In prairies, we will have the opposite. We will have calcium carbonate complexing with phosphorus and making it unavailable. So we have to understand these processes, understand these dynamics that are taking place in the soil to be able to manage nutrients, to be able to grow food more efficiently. If we do not understand or not aware of that, we are wasting resources, we are posing a bigger threat to our environment, and we are basically causing farmers to lose money by applying too much fertilizer.
Right. So there's a few things you said that raised some concerns with me, because when you talk about precision farming, we're talking about having data. Because if we don't have the data, then how can we be precise? Um, Dave, come to you, but we need to question. One of the things wanting to know what are the advantages of mixed cropping and also having animals.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you sort of broke up a little bit.
Right. So somebody asked about mixed cropping. Can you hear?
Okay, I'm getting bits and pieces. You said mixed cropping.
Yes, and having animals on the.
Certainly. I mean, that's what I was hinting to. I think we had a greater diversity on in terms of crops grown on farm before, and especially tree crops. I think tree crops is really cropping systems, or you could call it agroforestry. Um, it's I think a very important or an approach that is highly recommended. And if you have a combination of the livestock in that mix, because you could also get your added manure, organic matter from that source as well, that's added. You could develop a system that is not or much less reliant on external or synthetic inputs and fertilizers and so on. So definitely it's an approach I would recommend. There are other systems, such as one that's developed in the Philippines called salt sloping agriculture land technology, where you cultivate across the slope, using leguminous trees like Gloricedia and the Lucinia, which we refer to as zing zing, in a way that you also mix with permanent tree crops. And between your rows across the counter, that space, you can grow your other crops, more short-term crops and so on within there. But the row of leguminous trees would add nitrogen to you, so you would your nitrogen demand for that area would be reduced. You would also have it as as feed for your livestock, and really, to me, that system is a win-win system. Added to that, you also have in that system, along the contour, vetiver grass barriers. There's a move now to try to encourage farmers to use that approach. I think it's very necessary for our terrain. So yeah, just want to agree with that contributor there with regards to a mixed cropping system with livestock.
And I have another listener that says that she's a new farmer and she's looking for some advice on on weeds management of weed.
Okay. Well, as a farmer myself, I try to I don't use weedicides, and although I'm in a very wet part, almost in the center of the island, in the Layo Valley, I'm able to do and get on without using it. But you have to be smart about it. It's a challenge because the rains we get, the weeds come up very quickly. But if you doing crops like tree crops, I try to interplant. I use actually I've been using um this crop, I'm remembering, oh, turmeric. I use turmeric, which grows and somehow it smothers the weeds. That's some of what I use. I also use dashing as well. Yes, it's a crop that I would sell, but also it helps to cover the soil, especially when it grows. So there's techniques. So brush cutting is the main thing that I use, but it is a challenge, and you have to be really on it. I'm not too sure what's the size of the farm that she has. So different approaches could be used. Mulching is another one. So if you have the vetiver that you're using to conserve the soil, that material you can use to cover the area and smother the weeds. There's certain type of weeds like the watergrass. It's very difficult, so you have to have an approach of trying to get certain things out, and that are more problematic. So there are certain weeds that we can tolerate, but we don't recognize them. There's certain weeds that are leguminous that can, add nitrogen to the soil. There's a study from work done in Martinique and Guadeloupe, using locally available materials or plants as cover crops that we can
Right.
integrate into the farming system to help us with the weed problem.
And so you see, you do brush cutting rather than taking a cutlass and going and really exposing. Can you hear me a little better now? I put my headphone on.
Yes.
Okay. Instead of cutting and leaving the ground bare, you do some brush cutting, so you leave a little bit of ground cover.
Oh yes, yes.
Mhm.
My soil is never really bare because what I cut, I mean, I don't cut it every day, so it grows a little bit. So what I cut, there's the material stays there as well, and it's not bare because I have trees all over the place. So the trees, when the trees build their canopy, they themselves would smother some of the weeds. So the challenge is not as great, you know.
Yeah, I know we're a little bit out of time. I'm going to indulge a little bit. I hope you guys will allow me. I have a little video of some of the flooding that we saw recently. I don't know if Denise has it here. Look at the amount of soil that's being carried down in the river. That's what's in Castle Bruce. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is painful to watch.
Yeah, I mean, this is soil loss that we're not able to get back. And attached to the soil is nutrients.
Yes.
And those nutrients, when they end up in water bodies, so let's say rivers, lakes, they are going to have an effect there as well, especially from nitrogen and phosphorus perspective. They're going to cause algal blooms, which can then reduce oxygen in those areas, which can affect fish and other aquatic organisms. So, I mean, we're talking tons and tons of soil, topsoil, rich, fertile soil that is sort of being washed down all the way to the ocean. So productivity in that area is going to be reduced in the future. So we need to be able to. We may not be able to prevent it, but we should be able to minimize the extent of the losses. We can't control Mother Nature, but there are certain things that we can do to minimize the impact. And those are the practices that we have to try to implement moving forward.
Yeah, Davidson, your reaction to watching a video like that?
Oh, yeah, it's yeah, you said painful to watch. Yeah, it breaks my heart because I know we can do better. I mean, disasters happen, and you know, we are impacted by climate change, but we have to also recognize that we are culpable in terms of our actions or inactions when it comes to the environment. We are the stewards of this beautiful land, and somehow we are bent on an approach to development that sorts of don't recognize the treasure that we have. We don't, we sort of, it's a misplaced, or something is just upside down. Here it is that we have that treasure, our forest system, the water that we have, and all these things. And we will take actions that will put that at risk. It's not the first time we've had, floods and landslips and so on. And this one is pretty fresh. I'm not too sure what will be the response. But if we have to go by the response to the during Erica, which was several years ago, to the Petit Savan situation, which was similar, and I juxtapose that to the 70s when you had the Bacatel disaster.
Mm-hmm.
There was the government at that time commissioned a study. They wanted to understand how that happened, why it happened, and so on. And there was wonderful, excellent research done in understanding the mechanics of slides, how they happen, the genesis, how they start, and it's linked to our soil type, and the rainfall, and not just rainfall, but rainfall over an extended period of time. So, and that's what happened. It's been raining consistently and so on. I think those reports have been ignored for too long. We need to get these studies to the fore, get people who can contribute involved to chart a way forward for better land use management in the country. Although we have a land use policy, but it's just on paper. It's no one connects with it. Okay. So a lot of work needs to be done in that regard if we want to address that issue. And as I agree with Mervin, we cannot probably prevent it altogether, but definitely we can do a lot more that will help us reduce the impacts and the effects on the landscape and on the lives of Dominicans.
Yeah, well said. What I would add to that is to say that we haven't got to think about soil only for agriculture. even if the theme is soil where our food comes from, Dominicans, we have to understand that even though our economy is totally converted away from agriculture, we can never get away from the need to preserve our soil. Because as we learned tonight, the soil is worth so much more than just a place where we plant our food. So we cannot say, well, we can import, we make enough money from, I don't know, whatever. So we can buy food from St. Lucia, we can buy food from America, we can buy food from wherever. Even if we can comfortably buy all the food that we would like to buy, the soil plays a much more robust role in our lives than that. And so this is part of the sensitization. This is why every year we make the commitment to recognize World Soils Day and to bring people like you and Mervin on, so we can help to sensitize folks, so we can stop treating soil as dirt. Or even if we treat it as dirt, treat it as valuable. Don't see it as something that we want to get away from, we want to do away with. And so, I have gone beyond the time that you guys promised me to be on. I'm going to take closing remarks from you all. I don't know if there's anything that you would have liked to share that I really haven't gotten to speak of, or anything that you may want to emphasize and reiterate. Moving, I'm going to start with you and make some closing remarks.
Yes, so let me say thank you. It was a real pleasure being here and discussing with you and Dave. I really do appreciate that. So yeah, I just want to reiterate the importance of soils for our livelihoods, for our ecosystem, as well as for our health. And again, soil is not dirt. I heard someone told me, when you come into your house and there is soil on your shoes, that's the only time you can call it dirt. Apart from that, you cannot say it's dirt. So that's where that's one example I can give about dirt versus soil. So soil is important for food production. Soil is important for other purposes in terms of building, providing strength for our building structures. We have to manage it properly. Dominica is the nature island. We have fertile soils. We have abundance of water. Our soils are generally high in organic matter, but we need to be able to manage it properly. Otherwise, we can have a situation where we have soil degradation. And that has happened in other countries where the very fertile soils have become sort of almost, I don't want to use the word useless, but cannot really produce food. And even by adding fertilizer, it's still not capable of doing that. So we need to take this very seriously, managing our soils, not just for our generation, but the future generation as well. And we have to try to minimize soil degradation, especially erosion. Dominica is mountainous, so we are going to get lots of rainfall and erosion, but we have to minimize the impact. I wish Dominica had sort of more of a research perspective, and in terms of getting enough information and data to help us make informed decisions. This is critical. Most of the developed countries, this is how the even policies are made based on science. We need data to sort of give us that direction. But we do have the capability in Dominica to improve management of our soils. And even if I am in Canada, I am willing and open to lending my experience and input in helping Dominica to achieve its full potential and manage its soil, and which is a non-renewable resource. So it was nice to see you, Dave, and I hope we will keep in touch moving forward.
Thank you very much. Dave, your closing remark. Dave, I was saying that I want you to give
I'm
some
sorry.
closing
I'm sorry.
remarks.
I'm
You're
sorry. I was
muted.
muted. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry
sorry
about
about
that.
that.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to reiterate the point that soil health, is connected to human health, and the health of the soil really is the continued capacity of a soil to function as a vital living system, right? By recognizing that it contains biological elements, right, that are key to ecosystem functions. Um, in Dominica, we have made some improvement, with regards to soils. In that, there is the National Center of Testing Excellence, which now provides the services for soil analysis. However, the prices that are being, charged or requested for these services, I don't think, the average farmer or any farmer can really afford them. So somehow we need to get our pieces together, right? We need to get the technical minds together, the policy makers together, and to work with what we have for the benefit of the country. Right now, we have things in a sort of haphazard way, and it's not really, we're not seeing anything happening really, from the efforts that are being made, because it's not holistic. The approach is not holistic enough. So that's what I would really call for. We need to take that aspect very seriously from the standpoint of food production, yes, but management of that, of the resource, generally. And we have recounted the range of benefits that soil gives us. If we want to continue to enjoy them, which I think we all do, we must act. We must act in a way that is informed, um, to better help us adapt to the effects of climate change. We must. I think it's even more, critical that we move in that direction. Another area that probably didn't come up is the whole aspect of environmental impact assessments. That function, which is the planning division has the responsibility for, somehow it's not taken seriously enough. And we have different things happening in the landscape. There seem to be, how you call it, not a standard sort of approach to that important function, getting the citizens to understand their role with regards to environmental impact assessments, because ultimately they're going to be impacted, you know.
Yep.
So we definitely need to improve on those fronts. All is not lost. I think collectively there is enough human resources inside and outside, and that's another point. We need to find ways. We have a lot of trained professionals outside that we need to connect with. As you heard, moving, they are willing, right, to support, but we have to create the avenues, make it easy for them to participate. They are busy people, engaged with everything else, but if it's going to be a hassle for them to get involved, like they have to beg to give their assistance or whatever the case may be, it's not going to happen. Somehow we need to adopt that approach of inclusiveness, you know, to get our sons and daughters to assist our lovely Dominica. And before I leave, our motto says, Appuie bon Dieu, c'est la terre.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so really the soil, the land should be central to us as Dominicans, as it should be a Dominican thing to love soil. So something like World Soils Day, maybe that's the only activity that might happen. I don't know, because we have elections and all these other things. But it should be something that we engage in fully, as Dominican citizens, you know. So that's what I'd want to leave with
No,
us.
very important points. The environmental impact assessment that you mentioned is so important, because then we can place things in the wrong place and lose the assets because it's in the wrong place, and damage the area that makes it useless or difficult to use in the future. Where we do roads, where we put hotels, where we put homes, where does our wastewater go to, what it does to the rivers, all of those basic things, and definitely it can be a lot more sophisticated than that. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for your time. What I'm hearing is that we need a more comprehensive and integrative approach to soil management. We should take advantage of the fact that we are small. So therefore, on a scale, it's not too much of a big investment. It's manageable. It's bite-sized because we're small. So we should really be able to be a model of a mountainous place with high rainfall, with a certain type of soil, and we can model and try different things that we can show the world. So, the theme for World Water Day is soil, where our food comes from. What is more fundamental than that? Our soil, we get food from it. That's where we get our sustenance. Our soil stores water for us. So all the rivers that we have that flow continuously 365 days a year, even when we're in Kawem and it hasn't rained really for 2-3 months, our soil is what's causing that to happen. Our soil is maintaining our forests, so we have fresh air to breathe. All of those things. Dave says, après bon Dieu, c'est la terre. It means that if you are a godly person, the only thing second to God is the soil. But yet we just watched it being washed away. Just in tons and tons of it in a minute, getting displaced and washed away. We need to do better. I want to thank the Dominica Garden Club. The photographs that I had came from them. And so there are some movements on the ground, grassroots movements, that we hope will result in the revival of the interests and the reverence that we had for our soils. So we look forward to that. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the knowledge and the energy that you bring, and the professionalism, and for the work that you do. Thank you so much. And as we said, let's keep trying. Let's keep trying. One day we will get these resources together for the benefit of Dominica and for the improvement of the quality of life for Dominicans. And we encourage you, if you live on a slope, plant some vetiver, plant some legumes, plant some peas, plant something else that's going to help to preserve the soil. And on Monday, take a pause and think about the soil and think about what you can do to preserve the soil, because that is where our food comes from. So Dr. Lloyd and Dr. St. Luce, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us. I really appreciate it. And maybe we don't have to wait until next Soils Day to bring you back. Maybe we can plan something else. Because I think if we keep the awareness, we might be able to change the attitude and see better results. So good evening and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Okay,
All right then.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. And listeners, this is it for another episode of This Week in Interview. Remember, if you go into the polls next week, if you decide to go, make a good choice. Write your X so you exercise your right. Don't do it out of fear. Do it bravely and let your vote reflect your values. Let the person that you give your one vote, let that person be deserving of it. And if they're not deserving of it, don't make yourself be that and vote against your own best self-interest. Good evening, everyone, and we will see you again next week, Wednesday. And this time we'll be in December for another episode of This Week in Interview. I want to say thank you so much to Kazim for standing in for Sam. Excellent job in the background doing the producing for us, Cassie. So thank you so much. Thank you, listeners, for staying with us. We went a little bit beyond, but I think it was important. We almost did an extra half hour. Lots of you made comments. Thank you for the participation, and we have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. Good evening, everyone.
Hi guys, it's Selena, and I will be live on Dissect Saturday, December 3rd at 7 p.m. Standard Eastern Time. You can watch on TDN TV, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Make sure you tune in so we can dissect my EP, alright? I'm possible.